Hey guys, my name's Greg Bear, and this is my channel, Greg's Halfling Garden. I'm going to explore all the aspects of gardening. For those of you who are unsure how hard it is to garden, it's quite easy if you follow methods like organic gardening, no-till, vertical gardening, square foot gardening, doing some vermiculture, composting, etc. It's very easy, and I will cover all these in future videos, but for now, I just want to give you guys a tour around my property to show you what I do here. I have a couple gardens, a couple fruit trees here and there, and right now everything's dormant, of course. I don't grow anything in the winter, but about a month or two, I'll start having the seedlings outside and it'll be a good time. So for now, let's go on a tour. We'll start right here. This is my front flower bed. We've got a nice little pond. We put a solar pump in. Got a few hydrangeas, butterfly bushes, sweet williams, crocuses, etc. And actually, I think the crocuses are actually starting to pop up right here. Don't have many left. Got quite a bad squirrel problem around here, so they kind of just dig everything up and then kill it, but what can you do? And coming over here, I've got some azaleas, and we have a ton of hostas planted in here. Some of the leaves on my hostas will get over 12 inches, and I have a couple small dogs, and it just looks hilarious. When the dogs sit under them, it's like a big canopy. I'm over here, got a little retaining wall here with some ivy on it. This is probably the only thing that's holding this wall up now. It's pretty junky at this point. Up here, we've got big old Asian pear. Asian pear is very sensitive to water, so if I don't keep it consistently watered, the fruits will actually crack because it goes from a dry state to a wet state. So this year I'm going to put some drip irrigation on this to really get the water consistent. It'll produce probably over 50 pounds of pears on it. And it's supposed to have a cross-pollinator, which I didn't feel like buying two of these because they were very expensive. So across the street, we actually have a community garden, and they have about 4 of those over there. So I actually get good cross-pollination with those. Pretty lucky with that. Over here, we've got my herb garden. I've got probably like 5 or 6 different kinds of mint. I've got chocolate mint, pineapple mint, peppermint, spearmint, and apple mint. Got some sage, some chives, I think garlic chives as well. I love getting pineapple sage once the weather warms up. And I've got a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head. Funny story about the chives. My mom actually bought the seed packet before I was born. I mean, I'm 32 now. And she planted those that long ago, and over the years she split it up and given it to different family members. So that chive plant's everywhere now. I've given it to a few people and split mine up as well. Chives are pretty easy to grow. Okay, coming over here, this is my original garden. It started out as a pretty small square. I think it was only 10 feet by 10 feet, and I've expanded it quite a few times now. And of course, there's the Hobbit door, which I named my channel after. I wish I could name it Hobbit, but Hobbit's actually copyrighted, so I have to use the word Halfling, because it's not copyrighted, luckily. So in the front here, I usually grow squash, patty pan squash, zucchini, yellow squash, some garlic. And I got this arbor at Aldi's, actually. This is like the 3rd or 4th year I've had it now. It's holding up pretty well. I'll probably put a coat of Rust-Oleum on it soon. It's getting rusty in a little spot, but nothing crazy. I like to grow cucumbers and pole beans and tomatoes on this, and sometimes pumpkins as well. And I've got another small bed over here as well where I grow the squash and tomatoes and stuff on that side. And coming in here, got the big bed in this garden. I've got 2 columnar apple trees protected in here. The deer love to massacre these things. If you've ever seen these things in person, they're pretty neat. It kind of looks like a Christmas tree with ornaments all up it once it grows. Haven't had fruit in a couple of years because of the deer, so hopefully this year I'll get a good yield on that. But in this bed, I like to grow squash, of course. A lot of zucchini. I grow cucumbers along the fence line here. North would be this way, so I get good sunlight along this fence for cucumbers. I wish I took a picture a few years ago. It just looked like a wild forest of yellow flowers from the cucumbers. I was probably picking 10 or 15 pounds of cucumbers a day from this fence alone. I like to grow straight eights and market more. I don't go crazy. I've tried Armenian cucumbers in the past, but I just stick with the originals because I know they work. And here, this used to be my strawberry bed. This is about an 8-foot by 10-foot bed, so 80 square feet, and I would yield maybe 2 pounds of strawberries a year in here, so it just wasn't worth the space it took up. I did strawberries for like 4 or 5 years. I tried to propagate the runners here and there, and I do have some, it's not great water over here, so I do have a drip irrigation on here to keep it consistently watered. I put a lot of compost down, but I just gave up on the strawberries, and I'm trying raspberries now. I bought a raspberry bush probably about 5 years ago from Tractor Supply. It's a heritage red raspberry, and it produces, I think, once a year. And I've been propagating the side shoots here for a while and putting them over here. I also have a fall gold raspberry, a couple of those in here. And I've got an Arctic kiwi in here I'm going to try this year. I bought it on clearance last fall, so hopefully it actually comes back. Over here, I've got a dwarf red gold nectarine. It'll produce medium-sized fruits, really delicious, but of course this is the perfect height for a deer to eat, so I have to keep it protected in this fence. And over here, everything's kind of a mess still. It's got fencing everywhere. I gotta adjust my fences. Like I said, I have a lot of water problems, so freeze and thaw really messes up my fence posts every year. Gotta find a better solution one day, but in these beds, I just grow more squash. Another awesome story. I went to a garden center, it's called the Country Wagon out in Maine, New York, and they had cups of herbs for $1.25. One of them was apple mint, and I bought that, planted in here, and within 3 years, it had spread all along this bed, and into that bed. So I had to take my, I think it's a 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow and dig everything out. It filled up the entire wheelbarrow, and I planted that up on my hill in the back. It's a good thing to help control the water and retain the soil so it doesn't slope down when it gets really wet. It's working really well, but somehow I didn't get all the apple mint out, so it's actually spreading again. It's probably about half full in these beds once it warms up. I'll be showing that in probably like 3 or 4 videos from now once we get to the spring tour. All right, this garden done. Of course, having a round door on a square frame just doesn't work, so I had to kind of fence it in at the bottom here, trying to hide it a little bit so it doesn't look too obvious. But yeah, I love this door. It's getting pretty old now. Gotta give it a repaint, but pretty awesome. Okay, coming over here, we can start up this peach tree right here. This is a white princess. This is, I think, my 3rd biggest peach tree. These are about 5 years old now. And then I've got the other one over there. Right now I got a lot of brown rot problems on my peaches, so I actually bought a horticultural spray. I try to keep everything organic as I can, but once it gets down to it and I can't solve the problem, I just have to go with a disgusting chemical to try to stop it, because I really want to get some yields off these peaches so I can sell them at my produce stand. This used to be my biggest tree. I actually had to cut off about 3 feet off the top. It didn't take it very well. I lost a lot of foliage on this. It defoliated itself really hard last summer. I'm hoping it comes back, because that was my prettiest tree I had. Coming over here, if you're new to peaches or looking for a good peach tree, this is my #1 peach tree I would recommend to anybody if you can find it. It's called the Columnar Red Rocket Peach Tree. It stays about 4 feet wide if you prune it properly, and will get, I think, up to 15 feet tall. This produces full-size yellow peaches that have, I don't know what the bricks count on. It's super sweet, but also has a really deep peachy flavor, which a lot of the white peaches don't have really good flavor, but they're very sweet. So I would definitely recommend that tree. I got that at Agway about 4 years ago. And another story with that, I used to do an aquarium, and I had a tiger Oscar, and it had passed away, so I wanted to remember my tiger Oscar, so I actually buried it underneath this tree. So I always say the tiger Oscar has given me these awesome fruits, because I treated it pretty well, gave it lots of little goldfish to keep it happy, fed it, and it was my little guy for a while. So coming over here, got another white princess. This is my biggest white princess right now compared to the other one. Luckily, the power line isn't, because the land slopes down, so the power line's a little higher up, so I didn't have to trim this one as hard. It's got a lot of nice growth on it. If you can see all the red shoots coming off, I'll probably give it a little prune fairly soon, and also spray this one down. Coming over here, another white princess. And over here, this is a Bella Georgia. Out of all my peach trees, this is probably the sweetest, but it also has not the greatest peach flavor. I mean, it's great, but it's not as strong as like the Colander Red Rocket. But still overall a great peach tree. Had to tie it up in the middle because when it does produce, it produces so heavy, this thing will just split apart and it'll just hang on the ground really hard, and I'm afraid it's gonna split in half one of these days. And over here, we've got the red gold nectarine. This is would be the semi-dwarf version of the one I have in the garden. And this thing has been massacred by deer 5 or 6 times now, down to like over here with nothing on it. And it always comes back. I used to have a weeping cherry over here, which eventually passed. I think because of the water problem I have down here, but this dwarf nectarine, or the semi-dwarf nectarine, just really does well right here, and I'm really happy. And I got a lot of buds on it. Do a little pruning on this year as well. Give it some fertilizer, and we will be good to go. I might get a harvest off of that one this year. Of course, I chose the worst day to do this video. It's in the 20s, it just snowed a little bit. Last few days were in the 50s. I should have done this video then, but I was pretty busy doing other things. Whew, a little bit windy out here. Over here, I've got a yellow delicious apple tree. I got this on clearance at Lowe's last fall, I believe. I think it was $10, so I don't have a lot of hope in it, but it does have some buds on it here and there. Not looking too shabby. Hopefully the deer will leave it alone for a couple years so it can get big enough to be on its own. All right, coming up here, this garden's my pride and joy. This one's only about 3 years old now, and I've probably got 30 loads of compost on this thing, which we're gonna take a trip to the composting facility. If anybody lives in the Broome County area, the Broome County, I think it's the Endicott Joint Broome County Composting Facility. It's over by Enjoy Golf Course. They give out free compost and free wood chips. You can take as much as you want, so I take full advantage of that. Grab a couple truckloads every year. At this point, I don't do any tilling. I switched to no-till now, and I just top dress everything once a year, which works out really awesome. And of course, I'm gonna take you on a tour of that pretty soon. But for now, another fruit tree here. This is a Red Delicious. I bought this the first year I got my house, so I think it's 5.5 years old now. It's probably about 12 feet tall. Got some problems on this one. It's very susceptible to cedar apple rust disease. If anybody's not familiar with that, think of like an octopus hanging off a tree. I'll throw a picture in right now for you. Yeah, it's pretty ugly. And that would produce a ton of apples if it didn't get to that disease. It always looks great in the beginning. It's always really green, and then slowly it turns yellow. Gets the rusty spots on it, and then the little galls on it, and the little spiky things underneath the leaves. So gonna spray with that with the horticultural spray as well this year. This is my Macintosh. I think this is the biggest tree I have now that I've planted. The trunk on it is probably about as big as a liter bottle of soda. It's really thick, really healthy tree. Of course, I didn't prune it right, so it doesn't have just one main branch. It has 3 at this point. This thing is standing over 20 feet tall now. Has a lot of very healthy buds on it. This one, of course, is susceptible to cedar apple rust disease as well, so I'm gonna spray this one too, and hopefully solve that. There's really nothing I can do for the actual cedar trees because they're not on my property. They're actually right over there. Of course, I can't just go chop down their trees, so I just have to spray or just not do fruit trees. And I really need these fruit trees to produce for my produce stand. And over here, just got one lonely crabapple. Anybody not familiar, a crabapple is a great universal pollinator for different mid, late, and early season apple trees. Kind of crosses the bridge between all of them to help cross-pollinate between them. And it worked really good. I also got crab apples on that and mix it in with my apple cider to get a lot of tartness. So I like my apple cider less sweet and more tart, kind of like a Granny Smith. This is a Reliance peach. I bought this at Tractor Supply. Same year I got the 2 apple trees. It came in one of those burlap sacks. And it's doing really well. It produces 10 or 15 pounds of peaches every year. It doesn't get a lot of sun because of this tree here. It's one of those trees that grows like foot-long beans on it, and it has really large leaves, so it kind of shades out the whole part over here. So this tree probably doesn't see more than maybe 5 hours a day in sunlight, but it still produces very well. The squirrels like to take the peaches off of this tree only for some reason. I don't know why, but it is what it is. Over here, This is pretty much just an asparagus bed. Also has some lemon balm in here. Lemon balm is an awesome herb perennial, especially for colder temperatures like this. It always comes back and just spreads like wild. And if you put it in your yard and then mow it, it just smells amazing. I also grow some test things over here like tomatillos, different kind of eggplants and things that I don't want to put in my main garden, so I can focus more on those in a smaller area. All right, coming over here, the old garden. This garden is about 15 feet by 30 feet. And in this garden, I grow about 300 pounds of tomatoes, 100 pounds of beans, and 10 to 15 pounds of cucumbers. And last year I had a lot of squash borer problems, so I didn't get many squash. I actually bought some BT that I'm going to inject into the stems this year to help kill the squash borer larvae early on in the season, and hopefully that'll help a lot. And of course, every year I lay down mulch in between all the paths, and I also collect all my grass clippings and put them on that. I'm going to talk about that in future videos, the benefits of mulching and using grass clippings, because most of the time they are free for one, and they do a lot of other things, which I'll speak to in the next video. Of course, I was a little lazy and I did not clean up the garden from last year, so we got a lot of dead bean plants in here. I got to pick the beans off and save the seeds for this year. I already got about a half a quart of good beans in here now. I grew a burgundy, a Kentucky pole bean, and a rattlesnake bean. Yeah, like I said, about 100 pounds of that. I sold them all at the produce stand for about $1 a pound. Made a good profit. Last year I totaled about $400 at my stand, and it's literally just a small shelf at the bottom of my driveway. It's all self-serve, trust system, and nobody stole a single thing. Honestly, people gave me more money than I should have. They were very generous. They left me very kind notes, which hopefully this year what I want to do is once a week we can count the money together. We can go through any notes that people left, go over the produce I sold. It'll be a cool video. And coming in here, I've got my greenhouse. I purchased this from Lowe's, I think about 5 years ago. I had one of those ones from Big Lots that pretty much was made out of a shower curtain. That thing blew apart pretty quick. This is about a 6 foot by 8 foot greenhouse. This liner has held up very well. I bought a Shelter Logic shed about 3 years ago, and that liner already fell apart, and this liner is lasting very well. It's got a few rips in it, but most of those are my fault from different stakes just rubbing against it too much. And in here I grow a lot of peppers. I never had a lot of luck with peppers because of the moisture problems and just heat problems in my specific microclimate. But this year I really hunkered down and I followed a lot of tips online, which include like pruning the buds off while the pepper plants are small so it has more time to grow a big plant, and that worked great. I was probably producing 6 quarts of banana peppers a week and selling those at the stand for $1 a pint. Did really well. This year I'm going to try to grow hatch chilies because people are obsessed with hatch chilies for some reason. Like our local Wegmans has the Hatch Chili Festival where they roast the peppers in one of those giant tumbler roasters. And I'm also going to do it's Ace pepper. It was highly recommended for northern climates that have a short growing season. It'll produce like a mid-sized bell pepper with a nice thick wall on it. Because the problem with the banana pepper or any of the wax peppers, they do have a thinner wall on it, so they're not so good for like if you want to do a Philly cheesesteak or have a really thick piece of pepper in your mouth. That's why I wanted to go with the bell pepper. But then you have the disadvantage, they are a larger fruit, so they will take a little longer to grow and a little bit more energy out of the plant, so you might not get as many peppers off the plant. And in here, what I want to do this year, I'm actually going to buy some 1/2-inch bubble wrap and completely insulate the south side and that side, and then get some 1-inch foam board with a reflective covering and completely do this side. Really insulate this thing up. What I do in about April, I take my shelf greenhouse, throw it in here. I've got a 300 watt small heater, and luckily it has a temperature regulator on it, so I can just run that. It doesn't cost me barely anything, so I'm double insulated here with the shelf greenhouse and that. I can even put a blanket over that, and I'll run that. That way I can get more plants under my grow lights started. Like my second round, after my tomatoes and my peppers have started, I can start maybe my cucumbers, maybe even go crazy and start my beans a little early. And not squash though. I don't have good luck with transplanting squash for some reason, or watermelon definitely. If you touch the main root on either one of those, they are very finicky and most likely will not grow and stunt themselves. So that's about all we have in the greenhouse now. I love this garden. Once it gets towards July and August, my tomatoes will probably be about 9 feet tall. It'll be a nice little jungle in here. I can hide in here in the summer and eat lunch, just relax with some nice calming music, some Lord of the Rings music I love to listen to in here, and just have a good time in the summer on my days off. Coming over here, this is a flower bed. Got lots more hostas, some Asiatic lilies. My girlfriend likes lamb ear, rhododendron, a few boxwoods. That's a plow that was in front of my grandma's house my whole life. She passed away, I think September now, and we've been cleaning out her house. So I've got a lot of cool little tools from my grandpa, my grandma, and my great-grandpa. They've all had at the house for years. Pretty awesome to go through. I used to have a rain barrel there, but after I switched to no-till, I really barely have to water anything at all. So I wasn't even using the water in the rain barrel. I actually gave it to a friend who has a garden and wanted another rain barrel, so it was a good thing to do. Coming up here, they've got a Honeycrisp apple. Of course, this tree is right on the line of where the forest starts, so I've got a family of deer, about 5 or 6 of them, that'll come down and ravage anything they can down here. Luckily last year it was a really good year for vegetative growth up in the forest, so they didn't bother things as much as the years in the past where we had a lot of drought issues and not a lot of vegetation growing back there. So these are doing okay. They're not as good as the other apple trees. I think these are about 4 years old now. Staying pretty small, but we'll see what happens this year. They've got buds on them. They look pretty healthy. And coming over here, we've got a Kefir pear. I've got 2 of these. Tractor Supply has been one of my mainstays for fruit trees. They're cheap and they actually grow very well. I could go to an actual garden center and buy these trees, and they come with a warranty and all that, and they charge twice as much, but I've had great luck with the Tractor Supply and Lowe's trees so far, and I'll probably continue with that. And you can see some of these buds if it focuses. They are fat on these. I actually got a yield of pears off of these 2 years ago, but I picked them a little early and they never ripened up. I didn't know that if you picked a pear, it wouldn't ripen up afterwards. It stayed very hard, but it did have a great flavor. So this year, if I produce, I'm definitely gonna hold these on a little longer. I'll just have to be mindful of the deer because I'm sure they will smell that sweetness on the fruit and wanna take these off as soon as they can. So that's that. And I guess I'll show from up here. Got some roses over here, some ornamental grass, and coming over here, I've got blueberries lining this whole fence line. Blueberries on this property, I haven't had much luck because they are like a shallow rooted shrub and they do require pretty consistent water. I've tried using very sandy soil with compost mixed in. It didn't work as well as I thought it would. I probably had close to 50 plants at one time, and the deer of course massacre those as well because they're the perfect height for them to eat off of. But that's where I'm at with blueberries. I probably have about 5 plants left that are okay. I haven't got many blueberries off my plants. I just go up the road at this point. There's a lady that has a field of blueberries and she sells them probably, I think, $1 a pound. So I just go up there when I want blueberries. I actually sold about 20 pounds at my produce stand. I bought them and sold them for twice as much as I paid, made a little profit off of that. That was pretty awesome. And she actually owns Showtime Costumes. She was on the show American Pickers at one point. If you've ever seen the episode where the really mean old lady, trying to remember which one, I don't know anymore actually. I think it was like season 2 or 3, but yeah. But she's actually a really nice lady in person. She just had to be mean because it was a reality show and all that stuff. So coming over here, this is my hops vine. I bought my dad a nugget hop for his birthday or Father's Day about 3 or 4 years ago. His is huge and he finally got some little offshoots coming off, and he gave me one, and mine's doing very well. Another thing I sold at the produce stand, I probably got a couple quarts worth. I made like $5 this year off of that. Hopefully I'm gonna let it spread across this whole gutter system and up there, and we'll see what happens. And I think that's the tour of everything at this point. I hope you guys enjoyed the tour, and I hope you stay along for this journey with me. Definitely subscribe to the Greg's Halfling family, become one of my halflings. Definitely like this video if you liked it, and definitely stay in the know for all my future uploads by turning on that notification bell. YouTube is a little weird with notifications lately, and if you don't have it set to notifications on always, you might not get notifications about my future uploads. And with that being said, I hope to see you guys all on my next journey, and I'll see you next video. Greg Bear out.